Alright guys, welcome back. Today we're continuing on with the Ranger Coyote swap. Last video, when I was working on this, you saw me basically removing everything, pulling the engine out, transmission, a lot of the other stuff that's kind of in the way, the fender wells and stuff. Basically I have everything kind of gutted out. As you can see, I got the radiator removed. I'm going to be replacing that. That might be this video. Basically, I found an aluminum one that'll fit in there. I had a stock 91 Fox body radiator that fit in there. It was copper core radiator, and it probably would have done all right, but it was just better to replace it with an aluminum one. So we'll get to that. Basically, I got the frame down to kind of bare minimum. You can see all the guts over here that I took out. So here's the twin I-beam pieces, springs. I took the spring perches off that were riveted to the side of the frame. And this piece here actually was mounted kind of right here. And that's where the steering gear was bolted up to, so that just kind of boxed it in and reinforced it. I took that out because that's basically going to be in the way. So have all that, the steering linkage and everything is all out. So that's all out of the way, which is good. And then it'll give me, basically I'm leaving these two cross members in right now. Just because I don't, until I get the new suspension here and start cutting that out, I'm going to leave it in. And I'll probably put some reinforcements when I actually do that, just so the frame rails don't move at all on me or something. But it's probably going to be a little bit before I get all that stuff. So basically just leaving it the way it is right now. There is some trimming I'm going to have to do with the new radiator. I'm going to just notch a little bit of the frame so it slides in here better. It's kind of nice because the lower radiator hose off of that Fox body will actually fit pretty almost perfect. I'll have to cut it in half in the middle and just put a little piece of pipe in there, but I'll be able to run it right off of this lower radiator, pipe off the radiator, and it's just going to come up right by the thermostat water pump on the Coyote, and then I'll have to figure out what the top radiator hose is, but I don't think that'll be too hard. They look like they're going to almost match right up. I have the steering column pulled out. Still waiting for my brake booster, the Hydro Boost. That's probably going to be a few weeks yet, so I can kind of get that there. That should clear no problem with the valve covers. Steering column though, that's going to be, once I get the motor set in here, then I'm going to have to try and figure that out. But from what I can tell, the steering shaft used to come out about here. I'm going to have to bring it down here almost, come and then lower it, angle it before the firewall, and then come through the firewall and come down here and then into the rack and pinion. I actually took some of the steering column apart. This shaft here, or this pipe, used to be here. Basically, I just kind of pried that out of there. It's just press fit in there, so I pulled that out. I'll end up probably having to cut this somewhere in here and angle it and put a little U-joint here and then angle it a little bit right before the firewall and figure out how I'm going to do that. But there's the old radiator. This is a new one, and will be the lower radiator hose there. I'll just have to cut it here basically and clock it just a little bit, but extend it with a little piece of pipe there. And then also on one of my videos, I'm going to I want to clean up this firewall. If you can kind of see in the video, it's got a nice slope or angle right here, or on this side, because that's where the pedals are. It comes straight down almost and then over so I want to kind of angle that a little bit, or push that back, because I don't need all that space in there. So I'm going to be cutting the firewall. Also, this kind of just below the steering column here bulges out. It's kind of goofy. Let's see if I can show you. Kind of bulges out right here. So I want to kind of make that flat and make it like the other side. Kind of clean it up, make it nice. I also, on this side, you can see that there's a little bit of a drop right here, and it comes up. On the other side is the fuel pump inertia switch. That's where it's mounted here in these two bolts. If you can see that. That doesn't necessarily have to be mounted right there, so I'm going to kind of angle it like this area is here, and just get rid of that little bump right there, and make that nice and even, and try and make it look symmetrical on both sides. But that'll be a little bit down the road. I think I might have to clearance the transmission tunnel a little bit, depending on how low I can get the motor. It's real close where I don't necessarily have to do anything, but I might just have to, right in the center, pound it up or raise it just a little bit to clear that 6R80. So we'll see once we get the suspension in, because that's going to kind of determine where everything sits. So yeah, we'll deal with that later. I think we're probably going to tackle the radiator today. I did go ahead and go through the whole motor, or the motor is basically done. I put some paint on it. Got it basically ready to go and set in there. You can see I got some of the front accessories on. I did end up running the F-150 front cover because this alternator sits in 1.5 inches almost compared to the Mustang one, because the Mustang one sits up a little bit, so it pushes it out and up, and then it would move out and hit the frame rail there. So this just clears the frame rail right now. I might have to, when I box in the frame, I might just contour it a little bit around that, just so there's a little extra room if I need to remove that and replace alternators. The only thing I'm kind of waiting for is I'm going with a KRC Power Steering pump that's going to be mounted here and run off the water pump. From what I can tell, it'll work on this F-150 front cover. They say it doesn't, and that you need the Mustang one. I had both right up next to each other, and the way it mounts, I believe, is it goes off these bolt holes, and then there's little spacers that come out, and I'm just going to have to clearance these two bosses here, maybe this third one, but the Mustang front covers have these machined off, and that one machined off, and then this one machined off. This one I don't think I'm going to have to, but these two I'll probably have to cut, which shouldn't be no problem. Just take a Sawzall to it, a grinder or whatever, and clearance that, and it should bolt on there, and it just runs off of there. So we shouldn't have any issues, and then we should have all our front accessories done. Everything should clear. All right, I think we're kind of up to date on that. So like I said, we'll get started. I'm going to have to, with this radiator, the core is quite a bit thicker than the other one, almost double the thickness. So I have to trim this lip down here all the way along there, because it's going to stick out just a little bit. So I'll have to make some new mounts for it. Like I said, do some trimming in here, but otherwise it should fit right in there. So let's get started on that. All right, originally from the factory, they had these sides here on the radiator support, and I ended up the front radiator support here used to come down and kind of curve just a little bit here, and came down and came back up. You can kind of see my weld line used to come along here and then came up. At the time when I had put that stock Fox body radiator in here, I just extended it. I realized that it would fit between the frame rails, so I notched the top here, and it would fit without having to notch the bottom side. So I just continued these side pieces here straight down, made it square, put this little edge on here. and it fit in here fine. I had a couple clamps up the top side, and everything fit in here. It's just that the radiator cap sits over in this corner and it won't hit. So I ended up having someone, our radiator shop, put a little elbow here to clear the top here, so it sat underneath. Worked great. What I'm going to have to do here is the new radiator will fit in here with enough room. It's just that it's going to be a deeper core. So I'm going to come in here and trim this along. I'm going to have about a 1/2 inch lip here and almost pretty much go all the way to the edge with this. And then I should be able to get in there. I'll probably have to redo the mounts, the rubber isolators too, to fit in here, but everything should work. So it's just a matter of trimming this quick along there, and we should get a better idea of how we can mount it then. All right, you can see how it fits in here. I got the engine just hanging here or set in here. See how it all fits. I do have the radiator cap bung, I guess you call it, cut off, so it goes in here. That'll be mounted here and come up. I had that trimmed the bottom there so it sits in there nice. I have to get some rubber grommets to mount it, so I'm kind of waiting for them. I do have the bottom radiator hose on here. You can kind of see I'm going to have to trim the frame rail just a little bit, but it actually sits in here pretty good. You know, once I get that trimmed, I can move it over. This is clocked a little bit different, so about halfway down, right where the straight part is here, I'll cut that, and then I'll be able to turn it, and then basically it's just going to go right on there. This hose is actually bell mouth, just a little bit. It's 1.5 inches down at the bottom, which this is 1.5 inches, but this end here is like 1 5/8 inches or something, 1 3/4 inches, but it's kind of widened right here, so I'll probably cut it back right before the elbow, and that should be, I'm hoping, 1.5 inches. That'll go on here, and then I'll just have to extend it, but otherwise it clears the alternator when it's on there, once I kind of trim back a little bit more on the frame rail. But otherwise I think everything's going to fit on here. You know, top radiator hose pretty much just straight over and in. I will have that power steering pump right here, so we'll see how that goes, how that's going to be in the way. There's enough room for what did I do with the fan? I'm going to put this Black Magic fan on here. See if I can do it one-handed here. So that'll get mounted there. And we should have plenty of room with the pump even there. But yeah, it starts to tighten up a little bit once that pump is in here. And then the top radiator hose, and then I'm thinking I'm going to be running the air intake this way to this side. We'll see, it might end up going the other way, but that's also going to be in this area here too. So even though there's room now, it'll probably fill up pretty quickly, but I think we'll be all right. All right, I picked up some generic rubber isolators off of Amazon. I think these were a 3-row GM rubber isolator, they call them. I'd actually gotten some 4-row and some 3 rows just because they're a little bit different length. I wasn't sure which one would fit here. This 3-row seemed to work the best. I still had to come in and, being this is kind of squared off right here, and this is a little bit more rounded in the corners, I had to kind of trim some of that out for the brackets, but they're going to work okay. I'll show you that in here in a second. I actually had to cut, it had similar stanchions just like this on the bottom that you can see I got cut off there and there. You could keep them on if you want. I didn't think it fit in these as well, so I cut them off just so it's kind of, the weld here will sit in this groove if you kind of trim the rubber just right. So I think that seems to work way better. So here's the isolators that I actually trimmed just a little bit. You can kind of see I had gouged out kind of on one side, and then it's got that little rubber nipple in the middle there. So I drilled a hole for it, and then I just got some real thin metal that I kind of bent up. But being the core on this is a lot wider than the last one I had, you know, I had to trim all this along there so it clears the bottom of the radiator, and it's going to stick out just a little bit past this spot here. So that's what I kind of drilled the hole where that rubber nipple is, and it sticks out just a little bit past, but it'll still clear and fit. And have another one for this side, so it sits in there real nice. I'll tack weld those little metal brackets in here, and I'll put a little paint on them, and then I'll be able to do the top one, top two. You can kind of see the holes where I had the last one that kind of were similar to this, that came over the top of that. I'll probably do the same thing. I'll cut those stanchions off the top here, and use that weld along the top and basically bolt it in like that so it holds it similar to that. So I'll have to make a couple of those, and it should fit in here nice. So it does clear. Basically there's this lip here where it's bent around these openings. It clears all that. This is about the only spot right here where it hits, but if I stand it up straight in here, it just clears that, or there's a little bit of room there. So we should be okay. It just, we'll have to figure out exactly where these brackets are going to go, and try and mount them in that same spot again. So that's the next step. All right, radiator's all mounted. Got my little brackets made. They're basically just C-shaped or U-shaped to go over the top of the rubber, and then kind of on the back side there against the core support. I have a nut welded on the back side. It actually spaces out properly there. And then this side too has got that. Actually, this side has two nuts welded together to space it, just because the core support isn't perfectly flat. But man, it's good and solid. That's not going anywhere. And then here's one of the bolts. That's the other one right there. So next I'm gonna try and get the fan mounted on here. I have to do a little bracketry work down here. I'm going to try and reuse these two holes here, but I'll bolt this and make a little bracket to bolt to the fan because they're a little bit wider on the fan I'm going to use. And then I'll have to make something for up here, which shouldn't be too hard. But once it's all said and done, I'll paint the radiator black and all the brackets black, so it'll all match. I still have to put the cover up the hole where the thermostat was, or not the thermostat, but the radiator cap was. And then I got to weld on the elbow and the radiator cap there too. So once I get that all welded up, then I can paint everything black. All right, got the fan mounted. Just a couple brackets. Bottom one too, so it's nice and tight. That'll work great. I'm going to take these wires that used to come out the side. I'm going to actually run them down and underneath just to height them a little bit. But that more or less is done, mounting the fan. Next step, basically putting a patch here and then putting the radiator cap on there. All right, got everything welded up here. I got my patch covering the old hole where the radiator cap used to be. And then also have the elbow welded on with where this is the one I cut off, so I just had to find that elbow here. Actually, Northern Radiator makes a perfect elbow radiator cap just like this, but of course, they don't have it in stock, and no one knows really when they were going to get more of them. So I ended up just finding a piece of pipe right here. I think it's actually used for railing, but it's aluminum. Being I cut that off, I just had to weld this in there. I think it's all right. It's not a stack of dimes or anything like that, but it's kind of the first time I've actually TIG welded aluminum. So I thought it turned out pretty decent. But all in all, radiator is basically done as far as modifications. I just have to pressure test it yet, make sure all these welds are leak proof. And then I'm going to end up painting the whole thing black, so it kind of blends in with the radiator core, but otherwise that's all done. So Hey, check it out, guys. Finally got my power steering pump kit in. Ordered that off of Summit, but it's a KRC pump for the Coyote. So far, love this thing. Took me about 5 minutes basically to install this thing. Real easy kit. Worked out great. They said that this was supposed to have the Mustang front cover on it. This is my F-150 Gen 2 front cover on here, and I actually thought I was going to have to machine or trim some of the front cover because there's a pulley that's supposed to be right here, and there's a couple other stanchions that come out that I thought were going to be in the way, but I didn't have to do anything to it. It got real close, as you can see. There's one spot right here. You can kind of see there's a gap there. I didn't have to machine that. And then behind the pump, you can kind of see it right there. It gets real close, but I didn't have to do anything. Another spot here is right here. I don't know, I can't remember if the Mustang front cover is machined here or not. Depending on how far this swings, because it's got to be able to tighten the belt up, it can get kind of close here and here, but you could trim that a little bit. I even thought here I was going to have to maybe trim this or something, but no, everything went on great. Basically install this bracket here with the 3 bolts. There's one there, and there's 3 spacers. 2 are the same size, and I think this is a different size spacer, but these 2 here and the one down here, and it bolts on, and then you bolt on the pump, and then once the belt is on, you can tighten it, and then they send with this water pump pulley. There's a little spacer that goes in here. I think it depends on if you have the 3-bolt water pump or a 4-bolt. This pulley is made for both, but that might be a little bit larger on the 4-bolt versus the 3. But mine, I needed that in there, so that fit right in there. Belt line's up real great. The only thing that was the belt, I'm guessing it just needs to stretch a little bit, but I had to actually put the belt or bolt up the pump with the belt and everything on it. I couldn't get the pump on here and then get the belt to go over it because it's so tight. I mean, this is, right now I have it pulled tight and it's barely almost touching there, but I think this will loosen up a little bit once it stretches just a little bit, and then I can move that a little bit more away from there, but otherwise it's not going to hurt anything unless it actually touches. But it is a little tricky, as you can see. Try and get to these 2 bolts depending on how you turn the pulley, it's in the way. The problem is once you tighten this up, you can't turn the pulley to clear that, so you almost have to kind of tighten one up and then swing the other one if you can. But I can just get in there and get those tightened, and it worked out great. But all in all, man, I love this pump. It's a spendier pump setup versus maybe some of the other ones like Power by the Hour Cell or something like that. Or if for some reason this Coyote came with the stock pump, but I don't think they did. Everything's electric, I think, on most of the power steering stuff now on the Coyote motors. But the kit, being I didn't have to machine anything on the front cover, worked out great. So it was worth the money. Just a matter of, here's a return that I'll have to hook up, and then the supply or the pressure side down here that I'll have to run to everything. But you might be able, I don't know how the AC compressor, I think it bolts to the side of the block here. You could still run, AC belt off of here. There's no room for a tensioner because that usually went here behind this bracket there. You can kind of see it's machined right there. But if you had, for some reason, were able to put the AC on here and get one of them stretch fit belts to work or something, you could even run AC off of here, and you would have AC, power steering, and alternator all nice and compact, and it works great. So excited to get this thing hooked up and in the vehicle and see how well it performs. So, but all in all, man, great kit. So if you're ever looking for that, for a solution there, that'll work out great. So sticking with the cooling theme to this video, I have this tube and fin transmission cooler that I had sitting around, so I want to put that on the truck also. we'll mount that in front of the radiator. So I just had some aluminum rod bent up basically and made some brackets to mount, you know, this would be the frame rail here and here, and then just kind of screwed it to the side here. Had little brackets on there, and then gave it a little black paint. But it'll be right behind the front bumper here, so it'll get airflow through those two holes there. You can kind of see the hole in the bumper there, one on each side, and that's where I'm going to be mounting it to, so it'll just sit in between here. So I'm going to mount that up here real quick. You can see the line on top, and then I got an elbow facing back because that just clears the bottom cross member, so it'll shoot right back. But I plan on running the transmission lines up to, you know, the one coming from the transmission will go to the top, fit in here, and then the bottom one will run down underneath and go to the transmission cooler, and then from the transmission cooler basically back as we'll run back to the transmission. So all right, there we go, transmission cooler installed. You can kind of see down in there. I'll get a picture here from the bottom. Kind of see it through the front just a little bit, maybe not. There you go, just got it bolted onto the frame. And then on this end, you got the one hose already hooked up. Just looped around the bottom. And we'll hook up the other two cooler lines once we get the transmission installed and get all those hoses run. So next thing before I end this video is I just kind of want to hang the engine back in here, and I want to put the fan back on it. And then just hang it in here, and because I have the power steering and all the front accessory drive on, that's going to be on it in here. I want to just see how much room I actually do have. So we'll do that real quick here, and then we'll probably end the video. All right, here we got the motor hanging in here, just to try and see how much clearance we have. You know, the radiator fan, about 1 inch of clearance between the pulleys, and got, you know, a little bit of room back here too behind the back of the head. So this is about where it's going to sit. You know, might be up or down just a little bit here and there, but you could get more clearance here if you went with a slightly thinner fan or slightly thinner radiator. That's up to you, you know, if you were to do this project. And also, you know, if you didn't have that style of pump on here, you'd gain more room there too. But one thing that might be tricky is the radiator hose here. Most of the factory ones come out and kind of go down and then loop back up, or at least the Mustang one does. Goes down, loops back up, and then goes in. And that's kind of the one I was hoping to try out. You know, I might have to splice it or make it shorter, that sort of thing, but I can't go down with it. And yeah, the fan's right there, so most of them have kind of a 45, so I don't know if I'd be able to turn the 45 this way, come along here just above the pulley between here, and then just make a 90 into the radiator here. The other thing to worry about here is your throttle body would be right here, and then your air intake. Being that I have the fill cap here for the radiator, I don't know if I'm going to run the air cleaner that way. Most likely I'll run it this way, but I might be able to run the hose, you know, just above the belt and between the fan and the reservoir here and in here, and then can kind of come, the air intake would go up above that and over into this corner here. So that's my plan. Well, we'll see if that pans out or not, or if I'm gonna have to do something kind of custom here or not. I'm just hoping to have that factory slip fit on here. And then kind of go from there. So I don't know, yeah, I might have to buy a couple hoses and try them out, but we'll see. The other thing that I was hoping to check out here is I might put in, there's a kit by MMR, I think another company sells them too, that basically it's a coolant crossover between the two heads back here that helps cool those back two cylinders. Most people run them on, you know, nitrous cars or blown cars, just because they get a little bit hotter if you're running boost. So I don't plan on doing that yet. Could happen down the road, so that's why I'm wondering if I want to do that. I wasn't sure if I'd have room back there. Looks like the modifications I made to the Firewall will give me room. I'll kind of give you a little, I'll show this down here. I think if you can see that. That right there is a freeze plug on that head. And then there's another freeze plug right here on this head. Both those would have to be popped out, and then they bolt into that spot. There's some O-rings on them and they slide in and it seals them up. And then there's just a hose that runs up over the top, which I think there'd be room. The transmission I don't think would be in the way, and the rear of the intake I don't think would be in the way. So yeah, we'll see what we end up doing there. It's like 120, 130 bucks for that kit. So I don't know if I want to do that or not, but we'll see. I got plenty of time to kind of think about that one. But otherwise, yeah, happy with the way it turned out here. We got, you know, enough room here for everything to fit. So far so good. And until next video, guys, I appreciate you watching. All right, see you later.